Enchantingly, my brilliant brushstrokes showed depth and texture, much like the bark of a tree. Why, hello there! I'm Bert Marcel, a famous artist, and I was born on January 14th, 1841, in Bourges, France. I am an impressionist, which is an artist who paints differently than the classic artists. I was one of the first women impressionists. At the end of the Romantic period of the arts, female artists emotionally suffered. My studies took effort, and life was not glamorous, but I persevered. I developed my own style, using visible and rough brushstrokes when this style was not popular. As I said, training takes time. My family moved to Paris in 1852, and my sisters and I went to school there to learn proper etiquette and how to become a housewife. In the painting and pastel drawing classes, we showed great talent and were immediately signed up for private lessons. Some of our art teachers discouraged our professional dreams as artists in a mainly masculine art world. However, our parents encouraged us and hired the famous art teacher Camille Corot to mentor us. Corot valued the sketch more than details. I had often copied masterpieces at the Louvre, but under Corot's training, I journeyed my own way. In 1865, I exhibited in the Salon, a well-known gallery, and my works came into the public eye. I received mixed critiques at the beginning of my professional career. Life was not easy for me. My mother supported me but was very critical. It tore me apart. I was lonely. I doubted myself. Why don't you take the brush yourself? I said to her once in frustration. At this time, women did not have many rights. I could not even go alone in public. A chaperone would have to look after me. Despite the trouble, I became successful. I was invited to join the Impressionists, a group of artists, mostly men, who rebelled against classic art techniques. Monet, Renoir, Cezanne, Degas, and Manet began the group along with one woman, Mary Cassatt. I exhibited with them 7 to 8 times. Then I married Manet's brother, Eugene Manet, and we were wealthy enough to help fund exhibits. It was important to my heart to make life as an artist better. My work did not look like real life, but showed real life. I used opaque lines, broad masses of color, and bright light even when it was not accepted in the professional world of art. I painted everyday family scenes, usually of 1 or 2 women and a baby. I applied paint freely with a very short and confident touch. In my painting called Cradle, my sister Edma rocked her baby. My brush strokes in this piece are light and feathery, and my colors of blue and orange are muted in the most lovely way. Edma is a model in many of my paintings, like Harbor at Lorient. It was my first seascape. I think Corot would have appreciated my techniques. It sparked imagination. Yes, my training took time. My life was not always enjoyable. My painting style consisted of real-life scenes that weren't actually lifelike. My life was not necessarily glamorous, but my parents were supportive. My father even built me a studio, while my mother was very critical and women artists were not respected. Later on in life, I had a husband and daughters who encouraged me. I persevered as a pioneer for art.
In the mid-1340s, fleas all rats carried. The plague was killed 1 out of 3 Europeans. Oh, hi. My name is Rita. Rita Rat. I was born in Asia in 1347. My family and I traveled down the Silk Road. Did you know rats love traveling the world? Hitching a ride on a merchant ship was my favorite journey. Life at sea was a dream. We ate grain until our bellies ached and slept in soft bales of cloth. Unfortunately, our life of leisure didn't last. Crewmen began getting sick. Even some of us rats weren't feeling that well. It was an immense relief scurrying down the mooring line when the ship finally docked. We made ourselves at home in the warm and welcoming European village. This place was a rat's paradise. Glorious garbage laid in the streets. We ate a grand banquet any time of the day or night. Any time of the day or night. We learned the merchant sailors were turned away and not allowed to disembark once the villagers learned some on board were ill. You see, rumors spread of a deadly disease that was highly contagious. There seemed to be no cure. Humans everywhere were scared. Before long, people began to get sick all around us. One night, we heard quarreling. A man was exclaiming, "This infirmity was a punishment from God." "Food is to blame," shouted another. A lady suggested maybe an earthquake was releasing cursed air through cracks in the ground. A priest believed Jews had cast this plague upon the Christians like in biblical times. Can you believe one lunatic even blamed me and my family for spreading the disease? Yeah, right. Anyway, no matter how it came, a darkness was here. Grown humans were rattled. Let's discuss the wee ones, the tiny humans made up a catchy tune. We heard the jingle as we progressed from village to village. It goes like this. Ring around the rosy. You see, when humans became infected, they broke out in dark rose-like splotches with red rings around them. Pocket full of posy. As you can imagine, with so much death, the air smelled less than fresh. Humans began carrying flowers in their pocket, often posies, because they were so fragrant. Ashes, ashes. As more and more grew sick, determination to end the spread grew fierce. Villagers began burning down homes and even cremated the deceased. The remains of the deceased. We all fall down. Periodically, humans just collapsed in the streets. Others refused to even touch their clothing. Many animals died too. So many passed in such a short period of time. Hundreds were buried in open pits away from town, covered with only a thin layer of dirt. One morning, I woke, and we were in a new town. Scandinavia, Dad called it. Scandinavia, Dad called it. We searched all over and only found one small girl. We rats, among the other animals, became her friends and family. We cared for one another for many years. One day, other humans came through and taught her how to be more like them. She preferred our company, of course, but grew up in their ways. The people thought her to be wise, and when she was fully grown, they gave her all of the land in the whole town. The Black Death. That's what they call it now. It's estimated to have killed between 75 and 200 million humans. The way it ended is unclear. I overheard a healer saying the name of this illness was the bubonic plague. He declares it was spread by the bite of a flea. I'm not surprised. Fleas are evil. Dad guesses it may take Europe 150 years to rebuild. Like that'll ever happen. Blame the flea, not me. Blame the flea, not me.
Oh, hi there. My name is Leonardo. I was born on a Saturday, April 15th, in the year of 1452. I grew up in Arciano, Italy. I had no brothers or sisters, but I was unfortunately not married either. A few tidbits about me. I'm left-handed, and at times I like to write on the pages from right to left. I also like to write in code. I'm a vegetarian, did you know that? I became an artist, an engineer, and a scientist. People describe me as gracious, reserved, detail-oriented, and caring little for money. At the age of 30, I dabbled in mechanical engineering. Some of my many inventions included an underwater diving gear, an air cooling system, a modern style monkey wrench, the parachute, and I attempted to build a flying machine. I also invented war machines such as machine guns, grenades, a steam-powered gun, an armored machine with cannons that would become a modern tank someday. I also studied the human body and drew anatomy that medical artists follow to this day. I am most famous for my artwork. I painted The Last Supper on the wall of monastery. on the wall of a monastery. I decided to paint it in the monks' dining hall, so when the monks looked up from their tables, it was as if Jesus was there with his disciples. I painted the same table dishes, glassware, and tablecloth the monks used. And my most famous painting was the Mona Lisa. You can see it right here. You can still see it today at a museum in Paris. I only have 20 remaining paintings left in the world. I am a true Renaissance man. I am Leonardo da Vinci. Thank you.
Kia ora. My name is Pania, and I'm going to be talking about how my family and I explored the Pacific Ocean. You're probably wondering how we sailed across the Pacific Ocean. We used canoes, and those canoes were used out of trees and coconut fibers for the sails. One larger canoe was used for longer voyages, and another was used for island hopping. The much larger canoe could carry up to 35 people. And we navigated by stars. We fished for sharks, whales, and other big fish. On long voyages, we carried dogs, pigs, chickens, fruits, and vegetables, such as coconuts, yams, and bananas. On one long voyage we thought would never end, we thought was a long white cloud, but it ended up to be an island. We celebrated for weeks, days, months, years planning our new permanent home, Aotearoa. We no longer voyage, and we are now called the Maori people, and our new island is called New Zealand. New Zealand formed from an active volcano with the hot lava and ash cooled atop the surface of the water. A Maori fairy tale exclaims that Maui and his brothers fought a ginormous fish that Maui caught with only his fish hook. His brothers fought the fish with their mares, which is a type of weapon. The dead fish all cut up became the new rigid rocky island. This was my favorite story growing up. Maori women, like my mom, weaved baskets and mats, cooked, and tended the gardens. Men were considered te pa, which meant sacred, so all the women had to carry the heavy loads. Women were taught how to fight alongside the men, so if our island ever got attacked, we would have enough defense to protect ourselves. Tamoka, which meant tattooing. Men tattooed their whole face, while women tattooed their lips and chins like I have. Maori women and men greet each other like an Eskimo kiss and pressing their noses together. I love my heritage, my heritage, home, and history. Thank you for letting me share it with you.
Hello, I'm Catherine von Bora. I was born on January 29th, 1499. I became a nun when I was 16 years old because my stepmother sent me to the Brenna convent. She sent me because there was no schools for girls in my village. Most of the things I did at the Brenna convent was scrub floors and clean counters. When I was sent to the nunnery, I met my Aunt Magdalena. Because the Pope declared Martin Luther an enemy of the church, me and the other nuns were forbidden to read his books. Me and a few other nuns decided to leave the convent, but we needed help to do it. So I wrote to my brother for help, but he declined my request. So Aunt Magdalena wrote to Martin Luther for help, and Martin Luther wrote back saying that he would send his friend Leonard. One night in the year 1523, me and the other nuns escaped by hiding in fish barrels in a wagon. I experienced 2 failed marriage proposals. I married Martin Luther on June 13th, 1525. A few years later, my Aunt Magdalena came to live with me and Martin Luther. Me, Martin Luther, and Aunt Magdalena went to live in the Black Cloister. On June 7th, 1526, baby Hans was born. Baby Hans catches the plague, but lives. On December 10th, 1527, Elizabeth is born. Elizabeth was fatally ill and dies on August year 1528. On February 4th, 1532, Elector John gives the Black Cloister to me and Martin Luther. At the Black Cloister, I am the manager, gardener, farmer, cook, nurse, cheesemaker, beer brewer, and hostess. In year 1537, Aunt Magdalena dies. Sadly, a few years later, Martin Luther dies. Me and my children are very poor. I stop hiring help when one of the maids starts stealing from the family. Me and my family are very hurt because we are very poor and we need the stuff the maid stole to sell to get money. I get in a wagon crash. The wagon flipped over, sending me into the ditch on the side of the road. I died on December 20th, 1552. When I was alive, I had 6 children and 2 adopted children. I am Catherine von Bora.
All answers come from questions. This represents me well, and the evidence of my challenging childhood and my masterful masterpieces. My brilliant inventions which helped impact our world today. If I never asked a question, I never would have gotten an answer. On April 15th, 1452, I was born in Vinci, Tuscany, Italy. My father was married twice and my mother was too poor to care for me, so I was raised by my benevolent grandparents. My childhood was full of curiosities. I used to buy caged birds and set them free and watch them fly by sketching and observing. And I studied plants and animals and watched the details of the birds' wings while they moved up and down. Nature was my massive classroom and I was constantly learning. At 14 years old, my grandfather died. So I moved to where my father lived in Florence, who apprenticed me to a local artist in Via del Braccio. I worked hard there, cleaning slates, sweeping floors, mixing paint colors, and making paintbrushes. Once I mastered one chore, I was given a harder one. I even posed for a sculpted statue of David. Okay, 6 years later, at 20 years old, I became a maestro. The word maestro equals master. Means master too. I I died 47 years later in 1519 France at 67 years old. But before I died, I had numerous accomplishments. During the Renaissance period, I was known as a Renaissance man because of my new ideas. Oil painting was a new technique that arrived from Northern Europe. I used as an apprentice. Soon I became even better at it than my own maestro. All of my new ideas came from my nature study. You could often find me in an open meadow or horse stable with a sketch pad drawing plants and animals in great detail. Ow! Sooner or later, Verrocchio, my master, declared my artwork superior to his own. Later, when I was a master, I painted some very famous paintings that include The Lady with Ermine, the Mona Lisa, the Last Supper, and many more after apprenticeship. I was truly a Renaissance man. I was also an inventor. Some of my inventions include an armored tank, a double-hulled boat, a submarine, a giant crossbow the size of an 18-wheeler, a cannon that could shoot a cannonball over 10,000 feet, a parachute, and hundreds more ideas and inventions. All of my inventions came from my nature study. All of my answers came from questions. One of my inventions for example, is an ornithopter, a flying machine that can carry a man that came from the study of birds. While some inventions were major terrible failures, some led to greater success after I died. Even though my childhood was difficult, it led to greater discoveries in art and technology. I never stopped asking questions and getting answers. I was truly a genius. I am Leonardo da Vinci.
My name is Marie Van Goten. I am 14 years old and a student dancer at the Paris Opera Ballet. I'd like to tell you about a friend of mine. Edgar Degas was born in 1834 into a wealthy noble family in Paris. He went to law school, but shortly quit to follow his passion for art. In 1855, he went to art school, but left to visit his relatives in Italy. Degas believed drawing was the foundation of good painting, and by 1860 he had copied 700 Renaissance and classical works. But he realized art should imitate real life. He became one of the greatest Impressionist artists, even though he did not paint landscapes, but painted and drawed objects in motion, even animals like horses. Over his career, he created more than 1,500 paintings, drawings, pastels, prints of dancers. His art was not of the performance, but of the practice and behind the scenes. He painted as an invisible observer and capturing the scene like a photograph. When he was asked why he studied ballet, he said, "Because it is all that is left of us from the Greeks." Degas focused on the natural movement of the body. Toward the end of his life, his eyesight failed and he almost became totally blind. He began to make small sculptures from wax and clay. He called the sculptures the blind man's art. His realistic sculptures were shocking to the public. In 1881, Edgar presented the only sculpture he would ever exhibit in a public. Just 38 inches tall, this mixed media sculpture was not well received by the critics. They called it ugly, but they acknowledged it for its realism and its revolutionary nature. Little Dancer of 14 years was sculpted from clay and had real dance slippers, horsehair hair, a satin bow, and real toe tube. Dancers like me at the time were subject to poor working and conditions where they were known as opera rats. not because they were scurried around the stage, but because we were at the mercy of older men. The dance sculpted me with my head held high and of dignity. Even though my arms were behind my back, he brought dignity to our struggle. With the realism and the compassion, he captured the difficult transition between life and art. Edgar continued to explore the relationship between the movement and the human until his death in 1917. His lives and life leave behind a legacy of art that is still enjoyed today for its exquisite style and subject. Art is not what you see, it is what you make others see.
I was born to do this. In the 15th century, born to hard-working, God-fearing peasant parents, I would in my young life fulfill prophecy that a young maid who would save France. Yielding to spiritual voices, I became an instrument in delivering France and its enemies into victory. Joan of Arc. As I am known by the modern world and as Toot Girl, born to a Christian family, my family's life revolved around church and farming. Therefore, we owned all kinds of animals and attended church often. Early in life, I knew I had a mission from God. About the age of 13 years old, I was tenderly visited by spiritual voices. They came to me in a bright light. I knew I should not tell anybody, and I didn't. One summer day, the Archangel Michael came to me and told me I would save France. I replied, I am just a young girl. How could I do these things? Michael said he would help me and left me in tears. When I was in my late teens, I had my uncle show me the way to the Dolphin, who was the oldest son of the king. The voices told me it was imperative the Dolphin assume his rule as king. Because he did not feel the urgency, it was necessary that I, with the guidance of voices, steer him in the right direction. I told him I was directed by God to help lead France to victory. I was able to deliver the Dolphin to the place to be crowned king, which was key to France defeating England. Though I would never live to see France defeat England, I was instrumental to the victory. The barbaric English caught me and imprisoned me. 1 year later, on May 30th, 1431, they put me on trial and declared me guilty and burnt me on the stake accused of witchcraft. On July 7th, 1456, at the same cemetery where I was burned, the documents which, with the erroneous charges, were tore up. My supporters happily celebrated. As I was growing up with my brothers and sisters, my life seemed so simple. I went from being a peasant child to helping France be victorious, all before dying at a very young age of about 19. I was aware of my calling in life, and nothing was more important to me than being obedient to God's will.
Have you ever dreamed of ruling a nation you were not born into? That's what happened to me. I was born May 2nd, 1729, in Anhalt-Zerbst, and that's a small state in the center of Germany. And I was given the name Sophia Frederica Augusta. Christian August was my father. He was a Persian prince and a general in the army. Johanna is my mother. She was a Swedish princess before she was married. When I was 7 years old, I caught a fever and became very ill. I coughed so hard, my spine twisted, and that caused my back to deform. And I had to wear an extremely painful back brace. In 1739, I met Peter Urick, who later became Peter III, and I did not like him. When I was 15 years old, Elizabeth, who was the Empress of Russia, invited me to come to Russia to possibly marry Peter, who was her heir. It took 6 weeks to take the long travel to Russia. I arrived February 9th, 1744. I realized living in Russia would be very different than living in my small kingdom in Germany. In June of 1744, I had a ceremony to transform my faith to the Russian belief system, and I received a new name. It was Catherine II. Peter and I were married August 21st, 1745, and I became the Grand Duchess of Russia. I did not love Peter because he was mean to everyone. It was 9 years before I had a child. Paul was my firstborn. He was born September of 1755. I was upset because Elizabeth took Paul to raise him herself. My second child, Anna, was born December of 1757. The Empress died January of 1762, and Peter became the new Emperor of Russia. I spent years learning and honoring the ways of the Russian people, and that pleased them. Peter, on the other hand, was mean to everyone, and he insulted me at a party, and that made the army mad. He stole church property for money, and that made the Russians mad. In April of 1762, I had another son named Alexis. For safety, I sent him to the country with a trusted servant. Peter became tired of ruling Russia and decided he needed a vacation to our country palace. My years of studying finally paid off. With my husband away, the army proclaimed me empress, and the people accepted me. I was crowned by the Archbishop on June 28, 1762. Later, I heard Peter had died fighting a nobleman in our country palace. I had no time to be sad because I needed to be the empress for my people. I believed an empress should have complete power and use it for the good of her people. I rewrote laws giving the people more rights. I opened schools for boys and girls and promoted books for reading. I saw the need for education and opened the first college for Russian women. I founded a medical college, and I opened hospitals and brought new doctors to staff these new hospitals. I had a heart for the underprivileged children and built them orphanages to house them. I had a stroke November 16, 1796, and died the next day on November 17, 1796. I was called Catherine the Great after my death. And at the end of my reign, Russia was a strong and wealthy empire. Although I wasn't born in Russia, I was admired for my passion to make Russia a successful empire. I am Catherine the Great.
Did you know a son with a common or firm mother can grow up to rule one of the most powerful nations in the world? That's what I did. I am William the Conqueror. I was born in 1027 in Normandy. My father was Robert, and he was the Duke of Normandy. My mother was a commoner named Arlette. She was the daughter of the tanner in the village. My father wanted to travel to the Holy Land. Before he left, he named me his heir. Whenever I was 8 years old, my father died. I am the Duke of Normandy. I survived 4 assassination attempts. My protectors thought it was necessary for me to flee into hiding to Paris.
I came out of hiding as a teenager. I fought many battles. I was victorious. I was accepted as the Duke of Normandy. I married a maiden named Matilda in 1052, which was a royal descendant of Alfred the Great. I knew Edward, who was the King of England. He had lived in Normandy for his childhood. I thought I was Edward's heir. In 1064, Harold Godwinson's ship crashed in France. Count Guy of Ponthieu took Harold as a prisoner. I paid a ransom, which was a large amount of money, to free Harold. I took Harold to my castle. I told Harold I would want to be the King of England, and I asked for his help. Harold promised to support me, but secretly Harold wanted to be the King of England himself. Harold went back to England and ignored the promise. In 1066, Edward died, and Harold was crowned the King of England. I was furious. I attacked England on September 28, 1066. My army marched to the town of Hastings. Harold's army had a very long march since the town of Hastings was so far away. Harold's army camped on a hill. I attacked the hill. I knew we would overcome the difficulties of the hill. It was a hard battle. Harold was killed, and the English army surrendered to me. On October 14th, 1066, I marched into London, and I was crowned King of England on December 25th, 1066. I sent for Matilda to come to England, and I crowned her Queen of England. I needed a home in England. I built a castle on the Thames River, and later it was called the Tower of London. I started a Norman way of life called feudalism, where I gave the lords land, and the lords gave me money and soldiers, and the lords gave knights land, and the knights served the lords, and the peasants worked with the lords' land for protection. In 1069, a large rebellion started out in York, England. England was not safe for Matilda, so I sent her back to Normandy. Denmark joined the forces against me. I paid Denmark to leave the fight. I defeated the rebellion in 1072. There were years of peace. In 1083, my eldest son Robert, led a rebellion. This saddened Matilda. Matilda was not able to fix the relationship between Robert and I. Matilda died on November 1083. I stayed in Normandy. My health began to decline. I died on September 9th, 1087. Throughout my life, I conquered a lot, people and doubt. I always believed in myself, even when others didn't. I am William the Conqueror.
Hola! When I was 13 years old, King Henry, my half-brother, wanted me to marry King of Portugal. He was very old and chubby, and not my type. I wanted to marry King of Aragon, Prince Bernadette. We got married in secret at age 18 years old. We ruled together as a team over my country of Castile. We had 6 children. Sadly, most of them died or had very depressing lives. 2 famous daughters included Joanna the Mad and Catherine of Aragon's first wife of Henry VIII of England. As queen, I was not the traditional type. I picked my own husband and ruled in a way that was different than most. We went to war with Bernadette so we could return all of Spain. I didn't sit in my castle all day like others would. I built tents for the injured and delivered supplies. I even rode horseback and wore armor on the front lines. When you love your country like I do, you are among them and you fight with them. And we won, and we became a strong European power. During the war, an explorer, you might recognize his name, Christopher Columbus, he came to me asking for money for a risky journey. He was thinking he could find a new route to Asia. No one had faith in him, but I did. I told him to come back after the war for money. His journey was a success. He didn't find a new route, but he did discover America. This gave Spain many riches and wealth. I'm so glad I took my chances with Christopher. My husband and I started a Spanish Inquisition. We wanted all to be Christians. Jews and Muslims who didn't convert had to leave their homes and were killed. Sometimes it's hard being a queen and knowing what decisions to make, but I always ruled with the people best of interest at heart. I am Queen Isabella of Castile. Adios.
Do you know who robs from the rich to feed the poor? I, Robin Hood, did. I lived in England around the time of 1230 AD. My name used to be Robert Fitzooth. One day I was walking with the girl who I loved, Marion Filchwater, when I asked her to marry me. We had planned to get married later that week, but the sheriff figured it out. He came and tried to stop us from getting married. I fled into the forest and became an outlaw. I met other men like me who were attacked and were forced to flee. Me and my merry men had many adventures. Me and my friend Will Scarlet had an amazing adventure. The sheriff had sent soldiers to come and capture me and my men. We were safe in our houses, but Will wanted to go and spy on them at the Blue Boar Inn. He went, and with some help from the owner, who is our friend, dressed as a slave. A cat came and brushed against his leg while Will was in the corner listening. He quickly put his robe down, but the soldiers had already seen. They arrested him. They knew he was one of my men because of the Lincoln Green. The daughter of the owner came and told me, Little John, and Friar Tuck what had happened. The next day, me, Little John, and Friar Tuck went to go save Will. Will was in a carriage heading to the place where he was going to be hanged. I shot an arrow right at him. Luckily, it avoided him, but it got his attention. He looked to see where the arrow came from and saw me and Little John. Friar Tuck and Little John started to knock the soldiers out while I untied Will. We quickly ran back to the forest. After my adventures, Little John, Friar Tuck, and Will Scarlet thought that it would be best if I went to go live with my cousin. They didn't know, but my cousin hated me. Her father and my father were brothers, but they never got along. They dropped me off there and went outside for a little walk. My cousin came in and told me that she was going to help me. I believed her, and she went and cut one of my blood vessels in my arm. My arm started to bleed quickly. I fired an arrow out the window. Little John, Will Scarlet, and Friar Tuck ran in as fast as they could. They went to see what happened, and I told them. Will Scarlet went to go find my cousin, while Little John and Friar Tuck tried to help me. There was nothing they could do about it. I was going to die soon. They handed me my bow and an arrow, and I told them wherever I was going to shoot an arrow out the window, wherever it landed, that was where I wanted to be buried. I shot the arrow with the last bit of strength that I had, and then I died.
Carry out a random act of kindness with no expectation of reward.
safe in the knowledge that one day someone might do the same for you. I am Princess Diana. I was born July 1st, 1961. I was born in an aristocratic family with 2 sisters and 1 brother. I felt unloved as a child because my parents wished that I was a boy. I loved cruising on my bike, swimming, and swiftly climbing towering trees. My parents divorced when I was only 7 years old. I married Prince Charles July 29th, 1981. My ring had a 14 diamonds and a lovely 12-carat sapphire in the middle. I enrolled in royal protocol to learn how to be a princess. My dress for the wedding had a 25-foot train, and the wedding was at St. Paul's Cathedral, which I planned all by myself. As a princess, I visited patients in hospitals, raised money for charities, and read to sick children. August 31st, 1997, I was in a terrible car crash. The driver was going too fast and lost control. It was a dreadful crash. My friend Dottie died instantly, and sorrowfully, I died a few hours later. Because of the abominable and pathetic paparazzi that wanted to take pictures of me, I grievously lost my life at the age of 36. My 2 sons sadly lost their mother. I am still remembered as the princess with a purpose for all my charitable acts.
I'm Queen Elizabeth I, daughter of Henry VIII. My mom is Anne Boleyn. I have a sister named Mary, a brother named Edward. My mother died whenever I was 3 years old. She got beheaded for treason, which is an act of betraying one's country. I was raised by my governess Cat. I can speak 6 different languages. Favorite subjects are math, astronomy, and geography. When my father died, Edward became king when he was 8 years old. And he died whenever he was 15 years old. Then my sister ruled, and when she died, I became queen on November 17th, 1558. I said to my troops, I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king. I said to my country that England is my husband and its people are my children. When I died whenever I was 69 years old. My people gave me this nickname, Good Queen Bess. I have a weakness for flattery, and I have smallpox, which I use a mixture of egg white and crushed eggshells. I beautify myself with jewelry like rings and ropes of pearls.
A name dark and dank, a name that changed Western literature, a name that was terribly troubled. I am Dante. I was in love with an elegant woman. Her name was Beatrice Portoni, but she didn't even know me. In 1302, I was exiled from Florence because of false charges of corruption. And the Pope had a grudge against me, so he condemned me to hell. And in the time I was exiled, I wrote the Divine Comedy. The Inferno is the first book of La Divina Commedia, which is Italian for the Divine Comedy. It is about Virgil and I journeying through the 9 circles of hell to get to purgatory so that I can see Beatrice. Purgatory is the second book of the Divine Comedy. Purgatory is about Virgil and I climbing up Mount Purgatory to get to heaven, and we visit the 7 rings of Purgatory to cleanse us. So that we can get to heaven to see Beatrice. Even though death loomed over my head, I returned to Florence in 1321. And to my surprise, the Pope gave me my rights back to heaven.